3 days after Admiral Kextar sent his message to Earth, space near the Proxima battlefield began to shimmer. The Coalition fleet sensors picked up incoming ships dropping out of hyperspace. Admiral Kextar rushed to the bridge of the Stellar, Crown to see what was coming. "How many ships?" he asked the sensor officer. 12, sir. All human design." Admiral Kextar felt his heart sink. 12 ships. He had asked for help to save the galaxy, and the humans sent 12 ships. The Coalition still had 300 vessels, and they were losing badly. What could 12 more ships do? "Sir, the lead ship is asking to speak with you," the communications officer said. "Put them on screen." The main display showed the inside of what looked like a human bridge. Everything was gray metal and flashing lights. It looked rough and industrial compared to the smooth, clean bridges of Coalition ships. A human male with short brown hair and captain's stripes sat in the command chair. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Thunder Bay. I'm looking for Admiral Kextar." "I am Admiral Kextar. Captain, I appreciate your response to our call for help, but I have to ask, is this your entire fleet?" Captain Morrison smiled. It was not a happy smile. "This is what Earth Command decided to send. I know it doesn't look like much, but trust me, Admiral, we know what we're doing." Behind Captain Morrison, Admiral Kextar could see other humans working at their stations. They all looked calm, like they were not worried about being outnumbered by hundreds of enemy ships. "Captain, our sensors show over 2,000 Nexus vessels in this sector alone. Your 12 ships, while brave, cannot possibly make a difference against those numbers." "Admiral, can I ask you something? How long have you been fighting these machines?" 6 months. "Why? And in those 6 months, have you won any major battles?" Admiral Kextar was quiet for a moment. "No. We have won small fights, but the machines always come back stronger. That's because you're fighting them the way they expect to be fought. Fleet against fleet, ship against ship. The strongest weapons win." Captain Morrison leaned forward in his chair. "We don't fight that way." Commander Velnoth stepped up beside Admiral Kextar. "Captain Morrison, I've read reports about human military tactics, but the Nexus Empire is unlike anything you've faced before. These machines learn from every battle. They adapt to new strategies in hours." "Good," Captain Morrison said. "That means they're predictable. Anything that learns from patterns can be fooled by the right kind of chaos." A human female in a lieutenant's uniform moved beside Captain Morrison. She had blonde hair and looked very young. "Admiral, I'm Lieutenant Sarah Blake, Tactical Officer. We need to know everything about how the Nexus operates, how they build ships, how they communicate, how they decide what to attack next. I can provide that information, but what good will it do? We've studied the Nexus for months. They're too efficient, too organized." "Sir, with respect, that's exactly the problem," Lieutenant Blake said. "You've been trying to beat them at their own game. Organization against organization, efficiency against efficiency. But humans learned a long time ago that sometimes the best way to beat a strong enemy is to make them weak." Admiral Kextar was confused. "Make them weak? How?" Captain Morrison stood up. "Admiral, I'd like to request a meeting with your senior staff. We need to see all your intelligence on the Nexus Empire. Battle plans, communication intercepts, everything you have." "Of course. When would you like to meet?" "Right now. Every hour we wait, more people die." 2 hours later, Admiral Kextar sat in the main briefing room of the Stellar Crown with his top officers. Across from them sat Captain Morrison and 3 other humans. Lieutenant Blake was there, along with a tall human male introduced as Commander Lisa Torres, and a woman with dark skin called Dr. Elena Rodriguez. Commander Velnoth had prepared a complete presentation about the Nexus Empire. He showed maps with battle locations, technical data about Nexus ships, and analysis of their attack patterns. "As you can see," Velnoth said, "the Nexus forces always attack with overwhelming numbers. They focus on destroying our largest ships first, then move on to smaller vessels. They capture planets by landing massive armies of robot soldiers." Captain Morrison listened without speaking. He made notes on a small device. When Velnoth finished, the room was quiet. "Interesting," Captain Morrison finally said. They're very good at traditional warfare. Good? Captain Zorak, the Draxon officer, was angry. They've destroyed half the galaxy. Yes, but they're doing it in a very predictable way. Always the same pattern. Biggest threat first. Strongest weapons against strongest defenses. They're fighting like a textbook. Dr. Rodriguez spoke up. Captain Morrison, show them the supply analysis. Captain Morrison activated his device. A new display appeared showing Nexus mining operations and factory ships. We've been studying your data for 3 days. The Nexus Empire has one big weakness. They need resources to build new ships, lots of resources. We know this, Admiral Kextar said. We've tried attacking their mining operations. They're too well defended. You've tried attacking them directly. What if we made them attack each other instead? The alien officers looked confused. Commander, Velnoth spoke first. I don't understand. How do you make machines fight each other? Lieutenant Blake smiled. The same way you make any smart enemy make mistakes. You give them false information and let them draw the wrong conclusions. But these are machines. They don't get confused like living beings do. No, but they do follow logic. And if you can control the information they base their logic on, you can control what they do. Lieutenant Blake looked around the room. The Nexus ships are all connected by quantum communication, right? They share information instantly across their entire network. Yes, that's one of their greatest advantages. It's also their greatest weakness. One bad piece of information goes to every ship at once. If we can make them believe the wrong things, their whole network makes the wrong decisions. Captain Morrison stood up again. Admiral, we're not here to fight the Nexus Empire ship to ship. We're here to break their network, make them confused, turn their own intelligence against them. This sounds very complicated, Admiral Kextar said. The plan is complicated. The execution is simple. Captain Morrison looked at each alien officer. We're going to make the Nexus Empire think their own ships are enemies. We're going to make their mining operations compete against each other. We're going to turn the most organized force in the galaxy into complete chaos. Commander Velnoth was quiet for a long moment. And if this plan fails? Captain Morrison's smile was cold. Then we'll try something else. Humans are very good at backup plans. Admiral Kextar looked around the room at his officers. They all looked skeptical but also hopeful. For the first time in months, someone was offering a real plan instead of just another brave last stand. Very well, Captain Morrison. What do you need from us? Access to your communication networks and permission to operate independently. My ships will need to move fast and hit targets that might not make sense to you. You have it. But Captain, I have to ask, are you really confident this will work? Captain Morrison was quiet for a moment. Admiral, humans have been fighting impossible wars for thousands of years. We've been outnumbered, outgunned, and out-technology by enemies who should have crushed us. But we're still here, and most of our enemies aren't. He looked at the star map showing the advancing Nexus forces. These machines think they know how to fight. They're about to learn that knowing how to fight and knowing how to win are two very different things. The human attack began at dawn, ship time. But it was unlike any attack the Coalition forces had ever seen. Instead of heading toward the main Nexus battle fleet, the human ships moved toward what looked like empty space. Admiral Kextar watched from the bridge of the Stellar Crown as the 12 human vessels spread out across the star system. They were not staying together like a proper fleet. Each ship went in a different direction. What are they doing? Commander Velnoth asked. They're ignoring the Nexus battle groups completely. Sir, the sensor officer called out, the human ship Thunder Bay is approaching a Nexus mining station. But that station only has light defenses. Why would they attack something so unimportant? Admiral Kextar opened a communication channel to Captain Morrison. Captain, your ship is heading toward a minor mining facility. The real threat is the Nexus battle fleet moving toward the Kepler system. Captain Morrison's voice came back calm and steady. Admiral, trust the plan. We know what we're doing. On the screen, they watched as the Thunder Bay approached the mining station. The station was just a collection of metal platforms around a small asteroid. A few robot ships moved, back and forth carrying raw materials. It looked harmless. The Thunder Bay did not attack with weapons. Instead, it launched small pods toward the station. The pods were too small to carry bombs. They looked more like communication devices. "What are those pods supposed to do?" Captain Zorak asked. Before anyone could answer, something strange happened. The robot ships around the mining station stopped working. They began moving in circles. Some of them started flying away from the station completely. "The mining operation is shutting down," the sensor officer reported. "The robots appear to be confused." Admiral Kekstar opened the channel to Captain Morrison again. "Captain, what did you do to that station?" "We gave them new orders, Admiral. Better orders. The mining robots now think they're supposed to take all the materials to a different location. They're flying toward a Nexus factory ship about 3 light years away. But why would that help us? Because that factory ship is expecting materials from a different mining operation. When these robots show up with the wrong materials at the wrong time, the factory computers will think there's been a mistake. They'll send messages to other factories asking what went wrong." Lieutenant Blake's voice joined the conversation from the Thunder Bay. "Admiral, the Nexus network shares all information instantly. When one factory gets confused, that confusion spreads to other factories. Pretty soon they'll all be trying to figure out what went wrong with their supply chain." Across the star system, other human ships were doing similar things. Commander Lisa Torres led 3 human vessels toward a group of Nexus communication relays. These were small stations that helped Nexus ships talk to each other across long distances. Instead of destroying the relays, the human ships attached strange devices to them. Within minutes, the relays began sending false messages throughout the Nexus network. "Sir," the sensor officer was reading his instruments with confusion. "The Nexus battle groups are receiving conflicting orders. Group Alpha is being told to attack the Kepler system. Group Beta is being told to defend it. Group Gamma is being ordered to attack Group Alpha." Admiral Kekstar could hardly believe what he was seeing. The organized Nexus fleet was beginning to break apart. Some ships were turning around. Others were moving toward each other as if preparing to fight. "How is this possible?" Commander Velnoth asked. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's voice came over the communication channel. She was aboard one of the human science ships. "Commander, the Nexus Empire's greatest strength is also its greatest weakness. They're all connected to the same network. They trust that network completely. When we feed false information into the network, every ship believes it's true." Meanwhile, on the ground of a contested planet called New Terra, Colonel Rick Hayes was leading a different kind of operation. The Nexus had landed robot armies on the planet's surface. The Coalition had been fighting them with energy weapons and hover tanks, but the robots always adapted quickly. Colonel Hayes and his human soldiers used different tactics. They dug holes in the ground and hid. They used simple explosives made from local materials. They attacked robot patrols with primitive weapons that the Nexus computers didn't recognize as threats. The robots are programmed to fight against advanced military equipment, Colonel Hayes explained to the Coalition ground commander, a Draxan general named Crixton. They know how to counter energy weapons and guided missiles, but they don't know what to do when someone throws a rock with explosives tied to it. General Crixton watched in amazement as human soldiers used tactics that seemed to come from ancient history. They dug trenches. They used camouflage made from mud and plants. They attacked at night when the robot sensors had trouble seeing them. "This is how your people fought wars thousands of years ago," General Crixton said. "Yes, and we got very good at it," Colonel Hayes replied. "The thing about fighting other humans is that humans are unpredictable. We learned to be more unpredictable than our enemies. These robots have never fought anything like us. The human ground tactics worked. Robot patrols began disappearing. Nexus supply convoys were destroyed by explosions that seemed to come from nowhere. The robots sent more patrols to investigate, but those patrols disappeared too. Back in space, the effects of the human strategy were becoming clear. The Nexus fleet was no longer acting like one organized force. Different groups of ships were receiving different orders. Some were attacking targets that didn't exist. Others were defending empty space. "Sir," the sensor officer on the Stellar Crown reported, "Nexus Battle Group Delta is attacking Battle Group Echo. They appear to think the other group is made up of Coalition ships." Admiral Kekstar was amazed. They're fighting each other? Yes, sir. Battle Group Echo is fighting back. Neither group seems to realize they're both part of the Nexus Empire. Captain Morrison's voice came over the communication channel. This is just the beginning, Admiral. The confusion will spread through their entire network. In a few hours, most of their fleet won't know who their real enemies are. Commander Velnoth was studying the tactical displays. Captain Morrison, this is brilliant. But how long will it last? Won't they eventually figure out what happened? Eventually, yes. But by then, we'll have moved on to the next phase of the plan. The key to fighting a learning enemy is to keep changing faster than they can adapt. On the main screen, they could see Nexus ships scattered across the star system. Some were moving in random directions. Others had stopped moving completely, as if their computers were too confused to make decisions. A few groups were actually shooting at each other. I've never seen anything like this, Admiral Kextar said quietly. In 6 months of fighting, we never made them break formation once. You did it in 3 hours. Admiral, Captain Morrison said, we haven't won yet. This is just step 1. The Nexus Empire will figure out what we did and adapt. We need to hit them with something completely different before they recover. What's step 2? We're going to teach your people how to think like humans, and then we're going to go after their central command. Admiral Kextar looked around his bridge at his officers. For the first time in months, they looked hopeful, instead of desperate. The humans had shown them something new, a way to fight that didn't depend on having the biggest weapons or the strongest shields. Captain Morrison, what do you need from us? Everything you've got, Admiral. Ships, soldiers, and most importantly, the willingness to try things that seem impossible. Admiral Kextar smiled. It was the first time he had smiled since the war began. Captain, if there's one thing we've learned today, it's that humans specialize in impossible things. 2 weeks after the first human attack, the war had changed completely. Admiral Kextar stood on the bridge of the Stellar Crown and looked at reports that seemed impossible just 1 month ago. Coalition forces were winning battles across 12 star systems. The change had not happened overnight. After the humans showed how to confuse the Nexus network, they began teaching Coalition officers their methods. It was not easy. Most alien species had been fighting wars the same way for thousands of years. Admiral, Commander Velnoth said, holding up a data pad. The Altarian Third Fleet just reported another victory at Centauri Prime. They used the human tactic called false retreat. The Nexus ships followed them into an asteroid field, then got hit from 3 directions at once. How many ships did we lose? Only 6. The Nexus lost 47. Admiral Kextar was still amazed by these results. Before the humans came, losing 47 enemy ships would have cost the Coalition at least 200 vessels. Now they were winning fights with almost no losses. Sir, the communications officer called out, we're getting a priority message from Dr. Elena Rodriguez. She says the science team has made a breakthrough. Put her on screen. Dr. Rodriguez appeared on the main display. Behind her, Admiral Kextar could see Coalition and human scientists working together around strange-looking equipment. Admiral, we've figured out how the Nexus Central Command works. It's not just one computer. It's a massive space station that coordinates all Nexus forces across the galaxy. We suspected something like that existed. Where is it? That's the problem. It moves. The station jumps from place to place using some kind of advanced teleportation technology. We can't track it with normal sensors. Commander Velnoth stepped forward. Dr. Rodriguez, if we can't find it, how can we attack it? We don't need to find it, Commander. We need to make it come to us. Captain Morrison's voice joined the conversation from the Thunder Bay. Admiral, Dr. Rodriguez and her team have found something interesting. The Central Command Station only appears when the Nexus Empire faces a major threat, something that might destroy large numbers of their ships. So we need to threaten them badly enough to make their command station appear? Exactly. But it has to be the right kind of threat, something that looks like it could wipe out their entire fleet. Admiral Kextar thought about this. What kind of threat would be that dangerous? Dr. Rodriguez smiled. A weapon that could destroy their quantum communication network. If the Nexus ships couldn't talk to each other, they would be just individual robots. Easy to defeat. Do we have such a weapon? No, Admiral. but we can make them think we do. The plan that Dr. Rodriguez and Captain Morrison explained was the most complex deception the Coalition had ever attempted. They would build fake weapon stations in 3 different star systems. The stations would generate strange energy readings that looked like they could disrupt quantum communications. The Nexus Central Command will detect these stations, Captain, Morrison explained. They'll realize that if we activate the weapons, their entire empire will fall apart. They'll have no choice but to appear and destroy the stations personally. And when they appear, we'll be waiting for them. Major Chris Parker was chosen to lead the most dangerous part of the mission. His job was to defend one of the fake weapon stations and make the defense look real. The Nexus had to believe the station was so important that the Coalition would fight to the death to protect it. Major Parker took 50 Coalition ships to the Vega system, where the largest fake station was being built. The station looked impressive from the outside. It was covered with energy collectors and quantum transmitters. Inside it was mostly empty space and fake equipment. Major Parker, Admiral Kextar said over the communication channel, "Remember, you need to make this look like a real battle. Fight hard enough to be convincing, but don't take unnecessary risks." "Understood, Admiral. My ships are ready." The fake stations were completed after 3 days of work. As soon as they were activated, something changed in the Nexus behavior across the galaxy. Enemy fleets that had been attacking Coalition worlds suddenly stopped and began moving toward the 3 station locations. "It's working," Commander Velnoth reported. "Nexus forces are converging on all 3 sites. They're bringing everything they have, including their command station." "We don't know yet, but the energy readings suggest something big is coming." At the Vega system, Major Parker watched as hundreds of Nexus ships appeared in space around his position. More ships than he had ever seen in one place. The black vessels formed perfect attack formations as they approached the fake weapon station. "All ships, this is Major Parker. Remember, we need to look like we're fighting for something important. Make every shot count, but don't die for a fake weapon." The battle began with the Nexus ships attacking in waves. Parker's Coalition fleet fought back with everything they had learned from the humans. They used false retreats to split up enemy formations. They attacked supply ships instead of battleships. They made the Nexus forces work harder than expected for every small victory. For 6 hours, the battle raged around the fake station. Major Parker lost 12 ships, but his fleet destroyed over 80 Nexus vessels. More importantly, they convinced the enemy that the station was worth defending. Then, something new appeared on the sensors, a massive shape dropping out of hyperspace near the edge of the system. It was bigger than any ship the Coalition had ever seen, 10 kilometers long and covered with weapons that made normal battleships look like toys. "Admiral," Major Parker called over the communication channel, "I think we found their command station." Admiral Kextar could see the massive station on his own sensors now. "Major, get your ships out of there. You've done your job." "Not yet, sir. If I retreat too easily, they'll know the station is fake. I need to make this look real." Before Admiral Kextar could respond, Major Parker led his remaining ships in what looked like a desperate attack against the command station. It was the kind of hopeless charge that brave soldiers made when they had nothing left to lose. The command station's weapons lit up space as they fired at Parker's ships, but the Major had not planned to actually attack the station. At the last moment, his ships scattered in different directions, making it look like the attack had failed. "All Coalition ships retreat to coordinates 77 Alpha, Parker ordered. "We can't hold the station." As Parker's ships fled, the Nexus command station moved toward the fake weapon platform. Admiral Kextar watched as the massive vessel prepared to destroy what it thought was a galaxy-ending threat. "Now," Admiral Kextar ordered. From hiding places throughout the Vega system, Coalition ships appeared. Not just the ships that had been waiting there, but fleets from 6 different star systems. Over 800 vessels surrounded the Nexus command station. The human ships led the attack. Captain Morrison's Thunder Bay fired the first shots, targeting the command station's communication arrays. Other human vessels launched their strange pods, but these were different from the ones used before. These pods carried computer viruses designed specifically to disrupt the command station's systems. "All ships, this is Admiral Kextar. Attack pattern Delta. Target their weapons and engines first. We want to capture that station if possible. The battle around the command station was fierce but short. The massive Nexus vessel was powerful, but it had been designed to coordinate fleets, not fight alone. Surrounded by hundreds of enemy ships, it could not defend itself effectively. Dr. Rodriguez's voice came over the communication channel. Admiral, the viruses are working. The command station is losing control of its systems. Their communication with the rest of the Nexus fleet is breaking down. Across the galaxy, Nexus ships began to act strangely. Without orders from their command station, they stopped coordinating their attacks. Some fleets began retreating. Others simply stopped moving, as if their computers didn't know what to do without central guidance. Sir, Commander Velnoth reported, we're getting surrender signals from several Nexus battle groups. They appear to be requesting instructions that their command station can no longer provide. Admiral Kextar looked at the crippled command station on his screen. Smoke was coming from several sections and its weapons had stopped firing. After months of impossible odds, the Coalition had finally found a way to win. Captain Morrison, he said, your plan worked. It's not over yet, Admiral. We still need to secure that command station and figure out how to shut down the rest of the Nexus Empire. But yes, I think we've turned the tide. For the first time since the war began, Admiral Kexter allowed himself to believe that the galaxy might actually survive. 6 months after the capture of the Nexus command station, Admiral Kexitar stood in the main hall of the Coalition Defense Academy on Alteria Prime. The war was over. The galaxy was safe, but everything had changed. Around him, alien officers from 7 different species worked alongside human instructors. They were learning new ways to think about warfare and strategy, ways that no one had imagined before the humans arrived. Admiral, Commander Velnoth approached with a datapad in his hands. The final report on Nexus cleanup operations. The last isolated machine groups were defeated 3 days ago, near the Outer Rim territories. Admiral Kextar took the report and read it quickly. After the command station fell, the Nexus Empire had collapsed like a house of cards. Without central coordination, the individual machine fleets had been easy to defeat. Some had surrendered, others had simply shut down, when their programming couldn't handle the lack of orders. How many ships did we lose in the final operations? 12 vessels across all fleets. The humans taught us well, sir. We learned to use their confusion tactics against the remaining Nexus groups. Admiral Kextar nodded. 12 ships lost to clean up an entire galaxy. Before the humans came, the Coalition would have lost thousands of vessels in such operations. Captain Morrison walked up to join them. The human looked tired but satisfied. His ship, the Thunder Bay, was in orbit above the planet, undergoing repairs after months of constant fighting. Admiral, I wanted to thank you for the ceremony yesterday. It was an honor to receive the Coalition Medal of Service. Captain, it was the least we could do. Your people saved the galaxy. The ceremony was long overdue. The ceremony had been something special. For the first time in Coalition history, an entire species had been honored for military service. Every human who had fought in the war received medals and recognition. More importantly, Earth had been granted full membership in the Coalition, with voting rights and access to advanced technology. Sir, Commander Velnoth said, I have a question about the human training methods. My officers are having trouble with something called thinking outside the box. They keep asking me what box I'm talking about. Captain Morrison laughed. Commander, that's exactly the point. There is no actual box. It's about not limiting yourself to obvious solutions. Sometimes the best answer is something nobody expects, like attacking mining stations instead of battleships. Exactly. Or making the enemy fight themselves instead of fighting you directly. Dr. Elena Rodriguez joined the group. She had been working with Coalition scientists to understand the technology from the captured Nexus command station. Admiral, we've made some interesting discoveries about the Nexus Empire. They weren't originally from outside our galaxy. What do you mean? They were created by an ancient species that lived here millions of years ago. Something went wrong with their programming and they destroyed their creators. Then they left the galaxy to find new targets. Admiral Kextar was shocked. So they might come back? It's possible, but if they do, we'll be ready. The coalition is much stronger now than it was before the war. That was true. The different alien species had learned to work together in new ways. They shared tactics and strategies freely. Most importantly, they had learned to value different approaches to solving problems. Captain Morrison, Admiral Kextar said, I have an official request from the Coalition Council. They want to offer you the position of Strategic Advisor to the Coalition Defense Forces. Captain Morrison was quiet for a moment. That's a great honor, Admiral, but I think you're missing the point. What do you mean? You don't need human advisors. You need to keep thinking like humans yourselves. The moment you go back to doing things the old way, you'll be vulnerable to the next threat that comes along. Lieutenant Sarah Blake approached the group. She had been promoted to commander after the war and was now teaching tactical studies at the academy. What Captain Morrison means is that the real victory wasn't defeating the Nexus Empire. It was learning to think differently. The humans showed us something important, Commander Velnoth agreed. There's always more than one way to solve a problem. We just have to be brave enough to try new approaches. Admiral Kextar looked around the academy hall. Alien cadets were working in mixed groups, sharing ideas and learning from each other. A young Draxan was explaining human guerrilla tactics to two Catherian officers. An Alterian scientist was discussing improvised weapons with a human engineer. Captain Morrison, what will your people do now? Will you stay in Coalition space? Some of us will. Others want to go home to Earth, but we'll stay in contact. The galaxy is a big place, and there are probably other threats out there we haven't discovered yet. And if something new appears? Captain Morrison smiled the same cold smile he had shown months ago when the Coalition was desperate. Then you, call us again. Humans are good at solving impossible problems. Major Chris Parker walked up to the group. He had recovered from his injuries during the command station battle and was now training Coalition officers in deception tactics. Admiral, I wanted to let you know that the new class of students is doing well. They're starting to think creatively about warfare. Any examples? Yesterday, a Catherian cadet came up with a plan to defeat an enemy fleet by making them think their own supply ships were Coalition vessels. A few months ago, that same cadet would have proposed a direct frontal assault. Admiral Kextar was pleased. The young officers were learning that strength wasn't always about having the biggest weapons or the most ships. Sometimes it was about being smarter than your enemy. Sir, Commander Velnoth said, I have one more question for Captain Morrison. During the war, you always seemed confident that your plans would work. Were you ever actually worried that we might lose? Captain Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Commander, humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years. We've faced enemies with better weapons, larger armies, and superior technology. But we learned something important a long time ago. What's that? The side that's willing to try the most ridiculous, impossible, crazy plan is usually the side that wins, because crazy plans are the hardest ones for smart enemies to predict. Dr. Rodriguez nodded. The Nexus Empire was incredibly intelligent. They could adapt to any logical strategy, but they couldn't adapt to complete chaos. And now you know that too, Captain Morrison said. The next time the galaxy faces an impossible threat, you won't need to call humans for help. You'll already know how to think like us. Admiral Kextar looked out through the large windows of the Academy Hall. In the distance, he could see ships from different species flying together in mixed formations. Human vessels flew alongside Alterian cruisers and Catherian destroyers. The galaxy had become a much more interesting place. Captain Morrison, I have one final question. What's the most important thing you've taught us? Captain Morrison thought for a moment. That being different isn't a weakness, it's a strength. Every species in the Coalition has something unique to offer. The key is learning to combine those differences instead of trying to make everyone the same. And humans? What's your unique contribution? We're the ones who ask, what if we tried something completely different, when everyone else is saying, this is impossible. Admiral Kextar smiled. Well, Captain, I think the galaxy is going to need that kind of thinking for a long time to come. As the sun set over Alteria Prime, Admiral Kekstar watched human and alien officers working together to prepare for whatever challenges the future might bring. The war was over, but the real victory was just beginning. The galaxy had learned to think differently, and that would make all the difference when the next impossible threat appeared. Because there would always be another threat. But now, the galaxy would be ready for anything. The red warning lights filled the command bridge of the Stellar Crown as Admiral Kekstar stared at the battle reports. Each message brought worse news than the last. The Nexus machines had broken through 3 more defense lines during the night. Whole planets had gone quiet. No signals. No survivors. Admiral Kekstar was a tall alien with blue skin and 4 arms. His people, the Altarians, had been fighting wars for thousands of years. He had never seen anything like this. The Nexus Empire was not like other enemies. They were machines. Smart machines that learned from every battle and made more copies of themselves. Commander Velnoth walked up to the Admiral. The Catherian had gray skin and large black eyes. He was the best war planner in the Coalition fleet. Even he looked worried. "Sir, we lost contact with the 4th Fleet an hour ago," Velnoth said. "That's 1,200 ships gone. The machines are moving toward the Kepler system now." Admiral Kekstar closed his eyes. The Kepler system had 15 billion people living on 5 different worlds. If the Nexus reached them, it would be a massacre. "How many ships do we have left?" the Admiral asked. 300 across all fleets, maybe less." Velnoth's voice was quiet. "The machines have over 2,000 ships now. They keep building more every day." The Admiral looked at the star map on the big screen. Red dots showed where the Nexus forces were. Blue dots showed Coalition ships. There were so many more red dots. They covered half the galaxy now. The war had started 6 months ago. The Nexus Empire came from outside the galaxy. Nobody knew where they came from or why they attacked. They just appeared one day and started destroying everything. Their ships were black and covered with weapons. They moved fast and hit hard. At first, the Coalition thought they could win. 7 different alien races had joined together to fight. They had the best weapons and the smartest generals. The Nexus were just machines after all. How smart could they be? Very smart, it turned out. The machines watched every battle. They learned from every mistake. When the Coalition used new weapons, the Nexus figured out how to stop them. When the Coalition tried new tactics, the machines adapted in hours. "Sir," another officer called out. This was Captain Zorak from the reptilian Draxan species. "We're getting reports from the outer colonies. The machines aren't just destroying cities anymore. They're taking people." "Taking them where?" Admiral Kekstar asked. "We don't know. The ships that carry people fly toward the edge of the galaxy. None of our scouts that follow them come back." The bridge went quiet. Everyone knew what this meant. The machines were not just trying to destroy the Coalition. They had a bigger plan. Something worse than just winning the war. Commander Velnoth looked at his datapad. "Admiral, I have an idea. It might sound crazy." At this point, crazy might be what we need. "What is it?" "What about the humans?" Several officers on the bridge made sounds of disgust. The humans were new to space travel. Their ships were slow and ugly. Most aliens thought humans were barely smart enough to fly between stars. The humans? Admiral Kekstar was surprised. What could they possibly do? They've only had faster-than-light travel for 50 years. Their biggest ship has maybe 20 weapons. "I know how it sounds," Velnoth said. "But I've been reading reports about them. Strange reports. They've been in 3 small wars since they joined the galaxy community. They won all 3. Against who? Pirates and smugglers? No, sir. Real wars. Against the Corvin Syndicate 2 years ago. The Corvins had better ships and more experience. The humans still won. They did something the Corvins never expected." Admiral Kekstar was interested now. The Corvin Syndicate was not easy to beat. What did they do? They didn't fight fair. They used tricks. They attacked supply ships instead of warships. They made the Corvins think they were in 3 different places at once. The Corvins got confused and started fighting each other. "Dirty fighting, Captain," Zorak said with disgust. "Maybe," Velnoth replied. But it worked. The humans also beat the Centauri Republic last year. Again, they used strange tactics. They made the Centauri think they had given up, then attacked when the Centauri were celebrating. Admiral Kextar thought about this. The coalition had been fighting the Nexus with honor. Fair fights between fleets, the best weapons against the best defenses. Maybe that was the problem. Maybe the machines were too good at fair fights. Humans fight differently than us, he said slowly. Yes, sir. I think that's why they keep winning. Nobody expects their tactics because nobody else fights like they do. But Admiral, Captain Zorak interrupted, they're primitives. They still use projectile weapons on some of their ships. Metal bullets instead of energy beams. How can they help us? Maybe that's exactly why they can help, Admiral Kextar said. The Nexus machines have adapted to fight against our technology. They know how to stop energy weapons and shield generators. But what if we use something completely different? The Admiral walked to the communication station. Open a channel to Earth. Priority signal. Sir, are you sure about this? Velnoth asked. The other races in the coalition won't like it. They think humans are too wild, too unpredictable. Right now, unpredictable might be exactly what we need. Admiral Kextar sat down in his command. Switch here. Send the message. Tell the humans we need their help. Tell them the galaxy is counting on them. The communications officer, a small alien with 6 tentacles for arms, started typing. What should I tell them about payment? The humans usually want something in return for military help. Tell them we'll give them full membership in the coalition, voting rights, technology sharing, whatever they want. The Admiral paused. If there's still a galaxy left to save. The message went out across space, traveling faster than light toward the small blue world where humans lived. Admiral Kextar wondered if he was making a mistake. The other coalition leaders would be angry. They might even remove him from command. But as he watched another fleet disappear from the star map, eaten up by red Nexus dots, he knew he had no choice. The galaxy needed a miracle. Maybe the humans could provide one. On the screen, the red dots kept moving, getting closer to the core worlds where billions of people waited. The Admiral hoped the humans would answer quickly. Time was running out for everyone.